look at this passage. It says they, referring to the Gibeonites, it says they acted craftily, they acted deceitfully, they worked with trickery. Instead of bringing their army and attacking, no, they used the art of deception. And they sent the envoy. And so this envoy comes, and again, they've got all of these worn out items. Now, I want you to think about how tricky they were. They really did focus on the five senses, right? So first of all, they're going to say, no, we're your servants. We've come from a far country. So there's their hearing. And then they've got these old clothes on. That has to do with smell. How many of you ever been around someone that wore the same clothes for 30 days, right? They had a BO problem, and they, like, stand downwind from us, not upwind. Okay, and then they're saying, like, look at these bags that we have on our donkeys. So when you load up a donkey, you have these, we call them saddle panniers, and as you go along, as you carry them, they rub in the brush and on the rocks, and they tear them open, and so you got to patch them up. And you can these bags on the donkeys were all new, but you can see how they're all abused now, how they're all dusty and dirty and beat up, and I mean, you can see that. And then it appeals to their taste and their touch, and it says, look here at our bread. This was hot when we got it. How many of you like hot bread? Oh man, bring on the bread with like real butter, not that fake stuff, but the real butter, and just like thick, right? Just thick. Anyways, okay, and so that's what we had. But you can see now and you can feel it. It's all crumbly and you can taste it, man. It's stale. It's like those crackers I got out of the cupboard the other day that we've been saving since Y2K, and they were really bad. Anyways, stale. And so all the five senses. And so they're trying to sell them on this concept of make a deal with us. Now, you and I are constantly being influenced by information. I want to give you two examples of information. One of them has more of a moral connotation. The other has a completely different just worldview perspective, and I just want you to see these, because these are more subtle. You got to think not only on the obvious, you need to think more strategically. Joshua needed to, and that's why he got himself in a mess. So some of you might know this guy by the name of Bill Gates. All of you heard of Bill Gates? Yeah. And he's going to say something about the virus. It's just very interesting. It says, sadly, the virus itself, particularly the variant called Omicron, he's going to talk about it. He's going to say, sadly, sadly, sadly. Now, I'm not going to show you the whole thing, and I realize he's trying to make a point here, but as you just take out these sentences mean something. Words mean something, right? And the implications of those words may go farther than you realize. Listen to these words.
To kick off, actually, and get a bit of the scene setter from Mr. Gates, because this is, I know, a topic that you've spoken on again and again. You were ahead of the curve prior to the beginning of this pandemic. Where would you assess where we are today in beating COVID-19?
Well, sadly, the virus itself, particularly the variant called Omicron, is a type of vaccine. That is, it creates both B-cell and T-cell immunity. And it's done a better job of getting out to the world population than we have with vaccines. If you do surveys in African countries, you get well over 80% of people have been exposed either to the vaccine or to various variants. And so, what that does is it means the chance of severe disease, which is mainly associated with being elderly and having obesity or diabetes, those risks are now dramatically reduced because of that infection exposure.
Okay, so dramatically reduced. And I mean, that's kind of where he's moving that. But what I want you to catch is the sense. Sadly, the virus itself, particularly the variant called Omicron, is a type of a vaccine. Do you remember when all of this started and we said, God's given you an amazing immune system? Do y'all remember that? And your immune system isn't something that's created in a lab. It was something created by God. And your immune system, how many of you know there's like zero side effects when God's immune system works right? It actually attacks the right thing and not your body, right? Y'all with me on that? This discussion here is amazing because now they're starting to say, Well, you know, it took us 2 years to get the vaccine. Did you notice he mentioned the African countries? Those African countries he's talking about, 6% of them had a vaccine. The remaining ones have been exposed, and so they have natural immunity, and praise God for that, right? But what they end up saying in the end of this is, well, it took us 2 years. Next time we're going to do this in 6 months. How many of you know that's not very safe and it's not very wise? I want you to see this next thing that just this week, we saw the State of the Union address. And bless his heart, President Biden said this. And I want you to think with me on this sentence, okay? And it says this: as I said last year, especially to younger transgender Americans, I will always have your back as your president, so you can be yourself and reach your God-given potential. Now think about this. This is a blasphemous statement. He probably doesn't know that, okay? But it is. And the reason is because there's this God who's absolutely holy and just, who created the heavens and the earth. And he tells us what is right and what is wrong. And he creates this thing called sexuality. And he draws the boundaries. I don't draw them. You don't draw them. The culture doesn't draw them, right? And so once you get that right, that's right, we're going through from Genesis all the way through. Once we figure that out, when somebody comes along and says, we want you to reach your full potential. We want you to be yourself. We want you to be all that God has created you to be. That's exactly what we should be. But you don't do that by violating the moral laws of God. You do that by obeying the moral laws of God. Do you understand what I'm saying? Bless his heart. That is absolutely a demonic statement.